Okay, so thank you so much for that introduction, Alana. Really appreciate it. So I'm Amanda Cook. I'm the Director of Sexual Violence Prevention and Response, and then I'm joined by Meaghan Ross, who's our Sexual Violence Response Coordinator. Giving a little handshake there. So we're here to speak with you today, as Alana had mentioned, around supports and resources during the times of COVID. Certainly, we wanted to be able to share a little bit about what our office does, no matter what, but then also how services both on and off campus can continue to be accessed. We do have a link on this screen here that just points to a video that's been created. So if you go to our webpage, which is uwaterloo.ca/HREI, and then let's go to the Sexual Violence Response, Prevention and Response space, then you'll see the videos that we have there. We have 2 videos there.
Let me just move through the slides. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Everyone can see that? Amanda, you can see that? Great. So yeah, thanks for everyone for being part of this workshop today. For us, it's important to really start off every workshop that we do, whether that be in person or virtual, taking time to acknowledge the land that we're on and the treaties that govern that land, and then the responsibilities that we have, particularly those of us who are settlers on this land. So this is the land acknowledgement that's just recently actually been widely accepted across the university, acknowledging that the university is on the territories of the Six Nations and within the Haldimand Tract. So you can see in green that the Haldimand Tract is the land that was promised to the Six Nations, and you can see in orange that that's the land that they currently have control over. And I think it's really important for all of us to think about, especially as we're not all gathered today on campus, to think about whose land we're on. This is a website that you can use. There's a link at the bottom, and you can figure out across Turtle Island, which is North America, whose land you're on, which treaties govern that land, and then what agreements have been made under those treaties that we are part of those agreements. And for Amanda and I, it's impossible to talk about sexual violence without talking about territorial acknowledgement and thinking about our relationships as settlers, both in terms of the agreements that have been made under the treaties, as well as what we've learned from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, as well as a recent report on missing and murdered Indigenous women. And so we're going to talk about sexual violence sort of broadly or high level, but for us, it's always really important to understand that the intersectionality really matters, so that different people are impacted really differently by sexual violence, can seek different kinds of supports, are believed differently, are targeted differently. And so for us, we can't separate those things. We have to talk about racism, colonialism, ableism, all of those kinds of systems of oppression, while we also talk about sexual violence. So today we, as has been mentioned, we wanted to both talk to you about the supports and resources that are available for folks who are impacted by sexual violence. So when we say that, we mean both survivors as well as those who are alleged to have perpetrated, and those who are bystanders or who may have received a disclosure. We want to talk about what's available on and off campus, and we just want to mention that if folks have a particular question about a particular circumstance that you've dealt with, either yourself or a disclosure that's been made, that we'd ask folks to sort of park those questions, and we'd be really happy to connect with you through Teams or online, through email, to sort of discuss those particular situations. But we are more than happy to take questions today that relate to sort of any of the information that we are talking about in the upcoming slides.
So before we get started into the bulk of the content, we always like to just bring everybody's attention to how they're doing. We know that even outside of COVID times, people are bringing themselves into a space doing better or not so great. And so we acknowledge that, and we totally understand that the information that we're sharing today can be impactful for some folks. So certainly be aware of that. Meaghan and I talk about this stuff all the time. we're fairly comfortable with it, but then even we have days where we're, more or less comfortable with, how we're doing in that day. So we have a really helpful list here, just noting some ways that you can check in with yourself and to cope and manage through today's talk, but also thinking about, post-talk as well. Sometimes we hold things inside of us and we aren't quite aware of what's going on. So just putting your mind to your body and paying attention to that, and, it's actually kind of advantageous that hopefully we're all in spaces where we can take good care of ourselves and get the time that we need to do that. So, get up and move, take some deep breaths, go outside. It's a beautiful day out there. So it's really facilitating being able to go outside and be in nature and get some of that vitamin D. We've also included the 24-hour support line through the Sexual Assault Support Center of Waterloo Region. They've doubled the capacity of their support line just in recognition of COVID times. So please don't hesitate to reach out to them if you have any questions or concerns or just need to chat with someone.
Sorry, my mouse is getting a little bit stuck. Let's see, there we go.
Okay. So we're going to start off with discussing what do we mean when we're talking about sexual violence. We've included a really fantastic quote from Tarana Burke. My hope is in 50 years we'll have a generation that has grown up their whole lives hearing about consent and boundaries. That would be the dream for Meaghan and I, absolutely. We know that these conversations need to start earlier than university, but here we are. So we're doing our best. So this here is the definition that was created by the Ontario government and is within Bill 132, and it's also held within our campus sexual violence specific policy, which is policy 42. So sexual violence means any sexual act or act targeting a person's sexuality, gender identity, or gender expression, whether the act is physical or psychological in nature, that is committed, threatened, or attempted against a person without that person's consent, and includes sexual assault, sexual harassment, stalking, indecent exposure, voyeurism, and sexual exploitation. So it's a broad-ish type of definition. It's nice that it captures things outside of just sexual assault. But what we end up hearing about and seeing, and what many folks that we speak to who've received disclosures hear about, is not I feel like I've been exploited and I need support. So, what this can actually look like are jokes about sexual violence, slapping someone's butt, street harassment, stalking, not stopping sex when your partner changes their mind. So all of the examples on this slide are things that you might hear about yourselves or even see on TV or in other forms of media. And that might be how people are talking about their experiences of sexual violence as well. So it's not going to be in those 19’s packages like in the definition always. So in 2018, the Ontario government released a campus climate survey. So that was for everyone who attended universities and colleges in Ontario. And it was really it was called Student Voices on Sexual Violence. So they were trying to get an understanding of how often folks in university and college settings or any post-secondary setting have experienced sexual violence. And so on. So the results came in, part of the results came in a year later. And so this is a reflection of those. We were able to get campus specific results, which are included on this slide. And so what the data told us, there was about 22% response rate, which is fairly decent for a survey of this nature. I see Meaghan nodding her head. Yeah. And so what it told us is that more than half of Waterloo students who responded had experienced sexual harassment. About 20% of those who responded experienced stalking. But another 20% responded they'd experienced sexual acts without their consent. And only about 20% of students knew how to access supports and services for sexual violence. So that last point was particularly important to Meaghan and I and any of us doing this kind of work on post-secondary institutions, because we want to create that awareness. We want to raise that understanding of what does sexual violence mean and how can I get support around this and what options do I have. The other numbers actually didn't surprise us, and unfortunately we feel are somewhat low. We know that sexual violence is deeply embedded in our culture and society. And there are a lot of barriers that folks have in seeking support or even acknowledging that they'd experienced sexual violence. So we're really, excited that we had such a high response rate, but we know that that's probably not representative of the true number of incidents that are actually happening. Further to that, there are students who might have experienced all three of those things. So one student might have been stalked, been sexually harassed, and then also had experienced sexual acts without their consent. So there could be multiple layers in these responses as well.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about our office and some of the supports that we provide, and then how you can access us during COVID. So this is our very fun but cheesy picture, and a link again back into our main page where you can find, we have 2 videos that are just being released, so we're very excited about those. One video would take you through what it would look like to connect with one of us. So if you were a survivor and you needed to make a disclosure, sort of what our process would be. And then the other one looks at folks across campus who are embedding the work of tackling sexual violence and enhancing consent culture into their everyday lives. It's sort of our aspirational or sort of champion video. So you can see some of the folks you might know there really taking in our messages and the partnerships with our office really to heart. So that can be homework for you should you choose to accept. Nothing is required. So this is if I had to give you my 10-second elevator speech, this would probably take a little bit more than 10 seconds, but would be what the sort of main areas that we would cover. So please let us know if you want us to go into more depth with any of those. But in terms of our office, sort of an outline would be that we support those folks who are impacted by sexual violence. Before I mentioned that includes survivors, respondents, that's sort of the language that gets used around folks who are alleged to have caused harm, supporters for both respondents and survivors, folks who receive disclosures, and we can talk a bit about that if people have some questions about best practices around receiving a disclosure or your roles in that situation. We also support decision makers if there's a complaint that moves forward, bystanders, kind of really anyone impacted by sexual violence. And the things that we're helping people to think about are what's the safety planning that needs to happen, what resources can folks connect with, do folks need accommodations that could be academic but also workplace based, and then reporting and systems navigation. And that last one is always an option. I mean, all of them are options, but we feel it's really important to know that there's no obligation for folks to make a report once they come to see us. So our role is to talk through what a report would look like and to ensure that folks have information before they go down sort of any particular route. We do lots of awareness and education, so today is a good example, but we also run various campaigns. So in September, there's a Across Ontario campaign that we are part of with other post-secondary institutions around We Believe You, so sending some messages of survivors to combat the silence that so many survivors feel around sexual violence. We do events, so some of you may have participated in 16 Days or Consent Week. We do workshops, and we do lots of training. So one example is that we were able to have Laurie Haskell come in, and Laurie Haskell does lots of really important work around helping to understand what's happening in our neurobiology when an assault or a traumatic event happens, and then that helps those of us who are supporting folks to better understand their responses. So how are they presenting, and what does that mean? What does memory look like for them? All of those pieces. We also work around policy implementation and review. So policy 42 is sort of the main one that we are connected in with, but also policy 33. And then we sort of do like an overarching, so a lot of Amanda's work is around university responses. So ensuring things like that we have the appropriate services in place. That could look like another exciting announcement is that we have a partnership in place through counseling services. They were really instrumental in ensuring that the Sexual Assault Support Center can provide counseling directly to our students through this partnership. Amanda also does a lot of work around collaboration. So for example, we are part of the Graduate Students Association Safe Love Week this year. And then we also have a task force, which is set up sort of from across, a diverse representation of campus life that helps to think about what's the overall university doing, what's the sort of large strategic plan that the university is moving forward with. And then, of course, we do data collection, which gets presented very shortly to the Board of Governors in the annual report, as well as the climate survey that was mentioned previously. So that's sort of the snapshot, or the quick but long elevator ride speech that we would give about the work that we do. And again, let us know if you have any questions, particularly about that. I think the white, oh, there we go, okay. So we just wanted to let you know, just to clarify, so sometimes folks are rightfully concerned about what information they would have to share with our office and what remains confidential. So in Policy 42, it outlines that you should contact us. It's a suggestion. It's one that we are biased, but we think is a good idea. So if you received a disclosure of sexual violence, someone came forward and told you about something that had happened, we would encourage you to connect with us in order to debrief the disclosure, so making sure that you receive support yourself and that you have time and space to sort of process the impact of what you've heard. Also then to think about just to be in a sort of set of ears and eyes and processing and hearts and minds around safety planning and the support for the survivor. And then for us, it really is helpful to understand sort of the complex picture of sexual violence on campus, because we know that not every survivor is going to come forward to us. We know that not every bystander is going to come forward to us. And so for us, it's really important that other folks have skills and capacity to hear disclosures and respond to disclosures, and that they help to share that information with us confidentially, so that we get a sort of broad sense of what campus life is like with respect to sexual violence and consent. And just so folks know, when you consult with us, you don't need to share any identifying information. If we have worries about campus safety or some other limits to confidentiality, we would let you know. But other than that, those circumstances, all information can be kept confidential. And then we're still available. So the Sexual Violence Prevention Response Office is part of the Human Rights, Equity and Inclusion Office. And all of the offices within HREI are available during COVID. So for us, it's always been best if folks are able to make an email appointment with us to set up some time to talk through email. But certainly if something is happening right away, then that may not be possible. So we are available through telephones. We have our contacts there, and those are our university extensions, but they get routed into our computer system, so we would know when folks are needing to speak to us. And we've just been able to set up a virtual care platform through Medio. So that means that we have a secure system that we can do a video consultation with a survivor or someone who's received a disclosure, so that we can have that as much face-to-face contact as is possible, knowing that in person is always so much better for this kind of work, but not possible right now. And those are sort of our usual business hours at 8:30 to 4:30, like many folks on campus. But we would certainly do our best to accommodate if folks weren't able to meet in those times. Amanda, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add to that.
No, I think that kind of captures it. But if anyone has questions about how to reach us, or how we would utilize Medio or whatever, please don't hesitate to throw those into the chat, and we can address those for you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what other resources and supports are continuing to be available during the times of COVID. So we'll first address some of the on-campus supports that continue. So certainly campus wellness, so counseling and health services. Counseling services does have some folks who continue to be on campus. It is a bit of a skeleton crew, to be fair. They are, I think, majority of the time being students via the phone. as well as they are also using the Medio Virtual Care platform. Their hours are Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. And certainly feel free to reach out and book in a time with them, which is the phone number and extension that's currently on the screen. My understanding is health services are continuing to see folks in an as needed basis. So they do have some folks who are still operating within health services as well. So you can feel free to check out the campus wellness website at uwaterloo.ca to learn a bit more about how available their services are currently. Certainly for employees, the Employee Family Assistance Program continues to be available for those of you who are staff and are connected in with the Staff Association. You would have seen some emails coming out with regard to some of the resources that Homewood Health is continuing to provide to staff members. Occupational health is another great resource for staff on campus. They can also be reached via telephone for now, and then they can let you know some of the ways that they can continue to connect with you. Staff Association and Faculty Association, for any faculty who are joining us today, certainly are wonderful sources of support and resources with regard to what would be available if folks are needing some support in those areas. Off campus, we are very fortunate in our region to have a wealth of services who continue to operate and be fully functional. So Sexual Assault Support Center of Waterloo Region, we'd mentioned earlier, they are available 24/7. They do have the 24/7 support line. I'd mentioned earlier, they did double the capacity of their support line to meet the need of folks who aren't able to physically attend offices anymore for supports and services. So please feel free to reach out at any time to those folks. They are wonderful. They also have a whole host, we'll be talking about this a little bit later, of workshops and trainings and so on available online. So they're just a really, really fabulous resource in our community. The Waterloo Region Sexual Assault Domestic Violence Treatment Center is located at St. Mary's Hospital and Cambridge Memorial. So depending if folks are centered around Cambridge or St. Mary's, that service can be accessed through the emergency room of either one of those spaces. And they're a really great source of support for some of those immediate physical needs that might have emerged given a sexual assault or an experience of sexual violence. There's a whole host of services that they can provide there. How it works is you would access through the ER, and there's a nurse and a social worker who are both on call who would then attend to provide support and services within 20 to 45 minutes or so. The ERs are just amazing spaces right now to be in with regard to safety and masking and so on and doing those checks. And so certainly they did, all of the services we're talking about today have seen a dip in folks accessing their services. Certainly for lots of good reasons, people are trying not to be out and about as much as possible, particularly hospital settings, but it's really important that you all know that that is certainly always available, and there are lots of safety protocols in place to facilitate that. Victim Services of Waterloo Region is another great source of support. They continue to be available via the phone, and they can provide intakes and supports over the phone as well. Please feel free to check out their website. They do have a 24-hour crisis line as well. They are affiliated or located within Waterloo Regional Police. However, you don't need to have sought a charge or made a formal complaint in order to access victim services supports. They do have some access to financial means, meaning that you could fill out an application form and get access to certain financial supports around, say, if you needed a lock changed, if you needed a silent alarm to be carrying with you due to safety concerns from an abusive partner or something of that nature. So they also provide support around understanding some of the court processes. So for example, if somebody were seeking to apply for a peace bond, which is an order from the courts asking that somebody stay away from somebody else, they're really great about providing support around that as well. So acknowledging that folks can be anywhere right now, all over Ontario, likely. We really want to encourage folks to do a little bit of research yourselves if you're not locally based into what some sources of support might look like for you. So that would include the Ontario Coalition of Rape Crisis Centres. So certainly the website there is a great place to start, where you're finding the 24-hour support lines that are available, as well as the Ontario Network of Sexual Assault Domestic Violence Treatment Centres. So those are located all throughout the province at a variety of hospital settings. And so if you're to follow that link there, then you would certainly be able to find out where the closest one to you might be. So there are some safety resources we just wanted to highlight for you. Not sure if everyone is aware of the WattSafe app, which is available on your mobile devices. It's an app developed for Waterloo, and it includes such things as like working safely alone, which I guess doesn't really apply right now, but is a great resource for when you're back on campus and maybe in a lab or something of that nature. There are links to specific numbers and supports and services of a safety nature were listed there. The safety office is listed there. The campus police and Waterloo Regional Police are all there. There's also the like Find My Phone or Find Where I Am drop pin. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, Megan. It's like find where I am in case, you know, you tell somebody you're going on campus and then maybe folks haven't heard from you for a while. And so folks, if they have the WhatsApp app, they can see where you were, where your location is. So it's a really, really great app to check out if you don't already have it. And certainly Campus Police continues to be available in an ongoing manner. Certainly Waterloo Police and our campus police have an agreement. So if our campus police becomes knowledgeable of certain kinds of disclosures, then they are obligated to share that with Waterloo Regional Police Services. An example of this would be if there was an ongoing court case that they become aware of, if there was a greater risk of harm to the campus community or the general Waterloo region community, or if they are knowledgeable of an incident of intimate partner violence or domestic violence, then they do have to share that with Waterloo Regional Police Services. Campus Police is really, really great for us to work with because they are great about hypotheticals. So certainly yourselves, if you're ever in a position of having received a disclosure, you're needing to connect in with somebody sooner rather than later, they tend to be a great source of support where you're not required to share and like offload a ton of information to get a better understanding of how they could continue to support you with whatever is happening at that time. And if you happen to be on campus, certainly some folks are currently on campus and continuing to engage with campus, then they are a great source of support if you're feeling unsafe in any way on campus.
So in our last few minutes of us talking, and then we'll turn it over to questions, we just wanted to highlight some ways that folks can engage in a little bit more learning and some further training. So we have a number of workshops in June coming up. So we're partnering with the Sexual Assault Center to do a workshop on June 11th for workplace harassment, to sort of unpack what that looks like and how folks can address that. We're also doing a workshop with them around surviving social media as a survivor. So certainly I think many of us have begun to feel a bit of information overload and social media or online overload. So thinking about ways in which that might particularly impact survivors and how we can support each other to survive social media. And then we'll be doing a workshop on Policy 42. So if you have some high-level questions today, we can talk about those, but you'll know a little bit more in-depth information about the policy on June 9th. And then shameless plug for our consent conversations. It's a project we've just started online to do a little bit more online engagement with folks when we're away from campus. And so everyone is eligible to participate. We pose a question each Thursday, and you can win a $10 online gift card of your choosing. And you can find out all more information, clapping. You can find out all the information either on our website, the link was included before, or through our social media. So if you feel like following us, that would be great. We also have an agreement with the Sexual Assault Center for them to provide up to 7 hours of public education a month for UW, which is really exciting. So if folks are looking to have some tailored presentations, they've moved pretty much all of their public education online. So they are well set up to provide some education if you had an idea for something you'd like for your own department or some part of campus life that you're connected to. So their link is there. You can check all of the workshops that they're providing. And if you needed to connect with them, you could sort of touch base with us or through them directly. We work really closely together, so we'd be happy to set up a workshop that you are looking for. And some further training that are available to folks, still always available, but continuing through COVID shutdowns. So if folks are looking to get sort of a baseline information about supports and services that are available, we have the Learn module, so sexual violence awareness, which is kind of an overview of services support, so some of the material we covered today, and then a bit more in depth about the various offices that we work with and partner with on campus. If folks are looking for information on how to respond to a disclosure, there's an amazing resource that's been created specifically for campus folks that outlines how you respond to a disclosure. And if you complete the training there, you get a certificate. And we'll just let you know we don't have a date set, but we also do a training that results in the same certificate on campus, and we're looking to do that in July. So stay tuned to our social media and our webpage for more information on that one. And then we would always be willing and able to come and participate in any kind of workshops that you're looking for. So those are some of the most fun ones that we get to do, are the ones that are really tailored to a specific group of folks. So please connect with me if you have questions about that. And then our office runs training around conflict management, human rights, harassment, equity, and lots of different kinds of engagement. So presentation, workshops, but also sort of guest speakers or guest lectures. So you can check out everything there on our training calendar. So I think now is a good time for questions and queries that folks have. So over to you, Alana.
We'll give people a few moments if they have any questions to pop them into the chat. So we'll have what feels like an eternity of silence in a few moments.
And certainly, reminder, you can always connect with us later if you feel more comfortable to do so. While we're waiting, I might just mention, because I'm cool with silence, but this is an opportunity. So both Megan and I are a part of a national initiative called Courage to Act. And so Courage to Act is